What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another rendition of the Falcon Eye View for Pound for Pound. Today's Falcon Eye View is going to be, as you can probably tell by the thumbnail, is going to be centered and talking about the running back room. Now, the reason why I decided I wanted to take a closer look at that, it's been something that's been on my mind for a while now, but has been kind of spurred on by the things that transpired that we'll get into here in just a minute. But at the end of last season, you finished up with a running back group of Todd Gurley, Ito Smith, and Brian Hill. Not necessarily a very inspiring group, especially considering that Todd Gurley got benched for Ito Smith. Fast forward, you hire Arthur Smith. One of the tenets, one of the reasons why you hire Arthur Smith is because of the run game. More or less the balance brought by Arthur Smith's run game. Okay? You felt like by hiring Arthur Smith that you were going to be asking Matt Ryan to throw less instead of 40, 50 times a game, and potentially extending the back end of his career by giving him a coach that isn't afraid to run the ball and understands the importance of having a balanced offense. So it was no surprise to me that they pretty much cleaned house when it came to running backs. So I thought to myself, all right, cool, we're probably going to draft a running back. So I started doing a lot of digging and a lot of homework on draft eligible backs. Didn't think we would go one in the first round because of how high our pick was, but I really thought that, starting in the second round, there was a chance that we were going to draft a running back. So that's kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves. You sign Mike Davis in free agency, and had Christian McCaffrey not gone down, I don't think any of us would have been real excited about the Mike Davis signing. But since we got to see firsthand what a Mike Davis-led backfield looked like, we felt like at least for the first half of the season or what have you, that we were probably going to be in pretty good hands. You followed that up by signing Cordarrelle Patterson and listing him as a running back. Most of us probably felt like that was just a technicality, that he was going to be your return guy, but you paid him a pretty good chunk of money, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million, to be a return guy. So maybe there's something a little more to that, and that's something we'll get into as this video goes on. So all that being said, that was the moves you made before the draft, in regards to the running backs. You had Quadre Olison still on the roster, and then it was draft time. I was like, all right, cool, we're going, Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, Chuba Hubbard, Ramondre Stevens was kind of my dark horse guy. If you were looking for, a power back, type in the mold of a Derrick Henry. So these were the guys that we were eyeing. Obviously, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter both went pretty high. I think you had a chance at Michael Carter, but obviously the Jets took him. No, they took him before you had a chance to draft him. But either way. So come second round, you passed on him. Obviously, we got Richie Grant. Third round, you passed on Ramondre Stevenson, which I thought was an area that was a good spot for him. But as we've all seen, Terry Fontenot went BPA all the way through. So obviously, where we were picking, we didn't necessarily, the running backs obviously didn't line up. Because you didn't draft a single running back. Not at all. You signed two undrafted ones, Javian Hawkins and Caleb Huntley, but you didn't address that need in the draft at all. So I thought to myself, I was like, all right, cool. They must really like Mike Davis. And I think I even said on a show one time, that it wouldn't surprise me if Olesen became RB1 by the end of the season. And so, imagine my surprise and my shock when I think it was last Thursday, they released Cordarrelle Patterson after taking him all the way through camp, all the way through OTAs, dealt with the yellow shirt injury that was keeping him from getting touched, let him play in Miami, and gave him all the opportunities. So they definitely didn't lack for opportunities, right? And when they cut Caleb Huntley, I thought to myself, I was like, okay, cool. Maybe they just felt like he wasn't necessarily 100% ready yet to contribute, so they stashed him on the practice squad. As a matter of fact, Caleb Huntley was their first signing to the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken. But you, a few days later, cut Cordarrelle Patterson and bring in Wayne Gallman. So that move right there really made me step back and re-examine the entire offseason, OTAs, training camps, everything that I had been seeing, like written and with my own eyes, to try to figure out what Arthur Smith is doing with this, running back room. Because yes, it's Fontenot making the moves, but I can't believe that he's doing that without the direction of Arthur Smith saying this is who I want, this is who I don't want, right? So, all that being said, let's go ahead and then jump into what I think is going to transpire with this running back room that now consists of Mike Davis, Wayne Gallman, and Cordarrelle Patterson. So, let's kind of get into it. First, let's start with who I'm going to go ahead and say is your RB1. And that's Mike Davis. He was brought in from Carolina to be the lead back. And I think one of the main reasons why is, as you can see here, and this is a theme that I'm going to carry through this whole thing, is not only is Mike Davis an effective runner, but he's also an effective pass catcher. He had an 84.3% catch rate, as you can see here on the end, with 286 route runs. He has 6.3 yards per reception. And also, he had, he has 6.3 yards per reception, and which is 3.9 yards after the catch. Okay. For Arthur Smith, y'all gonna have to work with me because I got notes up here and I got notes here. Okay. Arthur Smith's offense seems to be predicated off of yards after the catch, because yards before contact in Tennessee was 7.3 yards before contact. So that's how much ground was gained on the average route before the ball was caught. Now afterwards, yards after catch was 4.8, so almost 5 yards after the catch. For contrast, the Falcons last year under Dirk Cutter was almost a full yard less, so 0.4 yards instead of 4.8. So it's almost a full yard less after the catch. So what I'm getting at here is, it really seems like Arthur Smith is trying to create an offense where he gets his guys in space and lets them run, because that's something that Mike Davis has shown. All right, let's see here. No, that's not the one I want. Okay. All right. That's something that Mike Davis has been able to show as far as like making space, creating space, things like that. He's had in his running ability, he had an evaded tackles of 72 and a juke rate of 32.1%, which was third best out of all running backs in the league. And his evaded tackles was 8th best, or ranked 8th. So what I'm getting at here is, I think Arthur Smith is trying to create space easier and looking for players who have the ability to create space. Like, one of the things, if you go and watch a lot of Tennessee's game plans, is there's a lot of condensed formations. And I think that Arthur Smith uses the entire formation as like some offensive coordinators use a bunch set. When you have a bunch set, it makes it hard for the defense to diagnose who's coming out of that as the primary target. And it also creates a lot of traffic, and generally speaking, somebody comes open, right? Like somebody gets out in space, which is the reason why a lot of offensive coordinators use bunch sets, is to try to create space. And I really feel like Arthur Smith uses condensed formations, like tightens it up to try to create more traffic in the middle so that somebody can come popping out of the other side. You saw it a lot with Janu Smith, block for 2 seconds and then leak out, but because he's created so much traffic and muddied the middle, it caused the defense just to really focus there, and Smith or Fisker or whoever comes leaking out. And I really feel like that's what he's trying to do here also with these running backs. Because one of the things I noticed quite a bit where there was at training camp, the open practice at Mercedes-Benz, they were throwing to the backs out of the backfield a lot. And to a point where Dave Archer in his little camp reports mentioned that Mike Davis was, creating separation against Deion Jones and Foye Oluokun, which are two very fast sideline to sideline linebackers. So that's what I had there, on Mike Davis. Because if you look at Davis, according, this is all listed by the websites. He's 5'9", 217. So I know we've said most offseason that that Arthur Smith was trying to have a room full of bigger backs, but it really seems like he wants that 215, 220 range, because the next guy we're going to talk about, Wayne Gallman, the newest signing, he stands 6 foot 215. So even though he looks to be a little bit more slender built, he has same measurables in a lot of ways as Mike Davis. Now, one of the things that caught my eye with Gallman, right? This is his stats from his time spent at New York this last season, is that he had 23 red zone touches on his 147 carries. He wasn't used a ton, right? But in that short production, he had 6 touchdowns. So he's very effective in the red zone, which is another area of woes of the Atlanta Falcons. So it really seems like they're trying to get guys who have a certain skill set. He had a 77.8% catch percentage to go along with Mike Davis's 84% catch percentage. What I'm really getting at here is the 5.4 yards per reception of Gallman. You add that to his shiftiness when he does run, or when he is running. I think you have two backs that have very similar skill sets. Is kind of what I'm trying to get at, and it obviously seems like maybe Olesen didn't show as much, and I really feel like that last year in Tennessee, it seemed like maybe this was something that Smith wanted to do, but didn't really have the backs to do it. Because for all the accolades that Derrick Henry had with his 2,000 yards rushing, he was not a very good receiver coming out of the backfield. So I really feel like this was an area that Smith thought that he could strengthen, do better at, and have more production, because he knows that, Matt Ryan got killed last year as far as sacks and things of that nature. And one of the easiest ways to slow down the defense is to get the ball out quicker. Well, if you got more guys that are leaking out, whether it be tight ends, running backs, things like that, gives you more options from different platforms. We talked a lot about Dean Pease rushing from every angle. I really think that you're going to get back to a ball spread type offense. Not as a spread offense as in the formations, but spreading the ball around. Arthur Smith knew coming in, by all accounts, by everything we've been told, knew coming in that he wasn't going to have Julio Jones. So he knew that he was going to be counting on Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley as his 1 and 2 wide receivers. You could sprinkle in Olamide Zaccheaus to take the top off from time to time. But I really feel like the offense that Arthur Smith is building here, he is going to be a space-creating dink and dunk offense that's going to use yards after the catch as explosive plays. Now, all this is going to be predicated off of the run game actually being something that people are going to try to stop. But it's going to be interesting to see how he uses both Wayne Gallman and Mike Davis, who are similar in the fact that, and we're getting to this, in the fact that they've been career backups. Kind of like the thumbnail implies, we have a room full of the other guys. Like the guys that were used to spell Christian McCaffrey, the guys that were used to take up the slack for Saquon Barkley. These aren't the guys. Make no mistake about that. I don't think Mike Davis is a for real deal RB1. He is our RB1 by default, but I don't think he's a true RB1. And I'll be happy to be wrong about that. But I don't necessarily believe that Mike Davis is going to be able to carry the load all year, which is why I think after a full offseason of looking at Cordarrelle Patterson, I guess they felt like he wasn't the guy either. So they had to bring in somebody who had a similar skill set in being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, run between the tackles, and that's Wayne Gallman. That brings us to the last other guy. The guy who has not been a solid anything his whole career, other than a return man. Now, it definitely seems like they're going to try to do everything they can to make Cordarrelle Patterson a bigger part of the offense. To me, Cordarrelle Patterson represents an X factor, a weapon X, if you will. Because you can do a lot of different things with a Cordarrelle Patterson. And they have shown the willingness to do a lot of different things with Cordarrelle Patterson. Whether it's lining up in the slot, having him line up in a traditional running back set, and obviously in the return game. By the looks of this room, he's going to have far more of a role than I ever thought he was going to have coming in. Now, I could end up being wrong about that. Like Wayne Gallman could solidify that RB2, and you just have a sprinkling, a gadgetness, if you will, of Patterson. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. I would show you some stats, but there really isn't much on him as far as stats goes, because he just hasn't been given much of an opportunity to run the ball in a traditional running back sense. Now, all this doesn't play into the fact that I haven't even brought up Keith Smith and his role, because I think he's going to do a lot more of a Patrick DeMarco style fullback, versus just a hammering fullback. I should have pulled the stats, but in watching the games, Arthur Smith's willingness to throw to the fullback is there. He's had a good amount of targets and receptions, so that's a part of Keith Smith's game that we're going to see if he can contribute. I know that in the open practice at Mercedes-Benz, he caught a couple wheel routes coming out of the backfield that went for big gains before he ever got touched. So I think that throwing to the backs out of the backfield is going to become a bigger part of this offense. At least that's what it seems like to me. Because that's the skill set that I seem to see with these backs that would make them more intriguing than necessarily drafting a running back. Because I kid you not when I say I was absolutely convinced that that's what they were going to do. But they proved me wrong. They didn't draft a running back. And in the 11th hour, they cut arguably their number 2 back and signed Wayne Gallman. So a room full of the other guys, I almost feel like we're dealing with a running back version of the movies The Expendables or The Losers. I don't know if y'all have ever watched any of those movies, but that's the kind of feeling that I'm getting here. So I'm going to be really interested to see what kind of run game Arthur Smith is able to produce and how much of it involves the running backs, catching the ball out of the backfield or lining up in the slot to be able to keep the same personnel on field and also make up for the lack of depth in wide receiver. Well, that's all I got for y'all today. As always, y'all can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128. If y'all want access to our private chat and exclusive content, especially as the season rolls around, we'll be doing film breakdowns and stuff like that. You can always subscribe to our Patreon. It's Patreon at Pound for Pound ATL. As always, Falcons fans, rise up.